So, how are Ford engines different from Chevy small blocks, and how are Chevy small blocks different from Chrysler and Dodge Hemis? So, let's talk about the best engines in the past 100 years from all three companies. Now, Ford, the flathead, and the modern assembly line are probably their most famous inventions. And then Chevy and the invention of the small block in the 1950s is really what forced all three companies to really change, how competitive and how soon they were coming out with new technologies. So, similar to the Chevy small block, the Chrysler and Dodge Hemi engine was a unique cylinder head design which created reduced heat loss and increased power and changed essentially NASCAR forever. And then Ford developed the SOHC camera as a result of the Chrysler Hemi engine. Now, although they didn't use that engine in NASCAR because it was banned before it was allowed to race, it was used in drag racing as is considered one of the most iconic engines of all time. So one unique difference between, let's start with Ford and Chevy, is Chevy decided to stick with pushrod small block engines, whether they were V8s, V6s, or even four-cylinder overhead valve or pushrod engine really is the most consistent element of General Motors engine history. And then sort of General Motors is really the one that pioneered the car purchases, like an emotional purchase, to have a price for every pocket or a price for every purse. That was sort of something unique, similar to what Apple did, is they made it like an emotional transaction. Ford kind of became famous for the old school engine family, big, heavy engines is really where Ford, the manufacturing innovations is more where Ford kind of cut their teeth, is the modern assembly line, the flathead engines, side valve engines, the Y-block, the FE engines. That's really where Ford's claim to fame. And then Dodge and Chrysler are really that third brand that kept both of those brands honest by coming out with the Hemi and having the Plymouth brands and eventually coming out with the Eagle and they had so many brands that basically Ford was really forced to innovate their engine factories. So when you had the Chrysler Hemi and you had the Chevy small block, Ford decided to come out with different engine families. So they developed the modular engine family in Windsor, Ontario. So essentially, when one of their plants, like let's say the Cleveland plant or the Lima plant, they also had this backup plan of having the Windsor, Ontario plant building these single overhead cam engines, and eventually they were able to phase out the pushrod engines like the 5.0 and slowly bring in the SOHC engines. Chrysler took a similar approach. They started out with V6 pushrod, quickly phased in SOHC 3.5 V6 engines into their mainstream vehicles.